Homage and respect to the Triple Gem. So hello everybody, this is Bhante Joe here, and I'm just here at Polgastua Aranya, and this is a historic Aranya actually. This was the first monastery where Western monks could come and train to become monks. That was run by Western monks, founded by a Western monk, Venerable Ñāṇatiloka. And I had the opportunity to go and visit the graveyard here, and it was one of my hopes actually coming to Sri Lanka was to pay respects at the stupa of Venerable Ñāṇa-Vimala, who was a student of Venerable Ñāṇatiloka and is believed to be one of only two rumored, I've heard, monks who are Western monks who are rumored to have attained arahantship. And the other one, I've also heard rumors to the counter that he was one level below arahantship. So Venerable Ñāṇa-Vimala is perhaps the only Western monk who rumors seem to consistently say that he achieved arahantship in the modern age. There may have been Western monks who became arahants in the time when the Greeks were in contact with Buddhism in India. But in the modern age, Venerable Ñāṇa-Vimala stands out. And there were other disciples of Venerable Ñāṇatiloka, who were really accomplished as well. There was Venerable Ñāṇaponika, Venerable Ñāṇamoli. They were very accomplished translators, and the Buddhist Publication Society was founded by disciples of Venerable Ñāṇatiloka. There was Venerable, as I mentioned, Venerable Ñāṇa-Vimala, who took a kind of more practice-oriented route, not so much publishing books and manuscripts, but just focusing on practice. And also Venerable Ñāṇadipa, who inspired many, many monks and brought this practice of dwelling in forests and kind of solitary kutis back to the Sangha. It was always there to a certain extent. You could go for, almost every monastic organization would have some opportunities, but he brought it back in this way where it was something you could do as a lifestyle and made widely available throughout Sri Lanka. So this place, the Island Hermitage, was kind of an incubator. It was a kind of a training ground, a place of opportunity that created many great monks, led to opportunities for many great monks. And when you read the life stories of these monks who came here, they were coming here at kind of sometimes very difficult and very uncertain times. And Venerable Ñāṇatiloka he founded this before World War II, but was here up through World War II. And he had to leave the country and ended up coming back. Venerable Ñāṇa-Vimala, he came here in the aftermath of World War II, he's German. And Venerable Ñāṇadipa, he came later, but also came at a time when he felt that he'd just renounce everything. So these monks, they didn't have the same access to Buddhist texts, Buddhist materials that we do today, where you can just go onto the internet and find pretty much any information that you want about Buddhism. They had only certain materials, just sometimes like the Majjhima Nikaya, and it wasn't always and might have some of the different Nikayas, but not always so easy to access. And one of the traits of the monks from Polgastua who came to practice, especially Venerable Ñāṇa-Vimala and Venerable Ñāṇadipa, is that they didn't have like a strong teacher tradition, so they took the suttas as their teacher, they took the Buddha as their teacher. So one of the things that Venerable Ñāṇadipa Bhante said when we had the chance to meet him, I think it was 2020, and during a Dhamma discussion, he said that he was one of the monks who'd proved that you can do it without a teacher, just using the suttas as your teacher. And another one would have been Venerable Ñāṇa-Vimala. So with only these resources, scant resources compared to what is available now in terms of the amount of Dhamma that's on the internet, Dhamma talks on the internet, knowledge about all the different types of traditions, they had the suttas, they had their sincerity, they had their bodies and minds, they had their effort. And the efforts that they put forth were really impressive. Venerable Ñāṇa-Vimala, he at the end of the war, there was a German lady, I think who'd lost one or both of her sons, or she might have had more than one son, but she lost her son, son or sons, during the war. And she took him on as an adoptive son. And when he came to Sri Lanka, she would sometimes write him letters, and he would always wait to respond to her. And eventually, he by the time that it came around that he thought he should respond, then he felt, well, whatever the problem she was writing about is no longer necessary. So he actually never ended up sending her another letter. So he basically cut all of his ties when he came to Sri Lanka and just made the Dhamma his sole preoccupation. Jnanadeepa Bhante was similar. His mother came to visit once, and then I don't think he ever spoke to her after that. He spoke to his brother a couple of times, but they had this very intense devotion to the Dhamma to the extent that they were basically willing to sacrifice everything in their life to move forward in it as much as possible. So the example that they set, and the example from those times, is very inspiring, because even with scant resources, even without the resources of a teacher, so long as a person has the right inner resources, then it's possible to progress in the Dhamma. And the lessons that their life bring, they teach quite a lot about the importance of effort, the importance of renunciation, the importance of focus. Life as a person who practices can be a bit like kind of little kids. They have these kind of like magnifying glasses, and sometimes they'll kind of take them and play with them and use them to like scorch ants or do other things, burn up leaves, burn up sticks, concentrating the power of the sun. And one of the aspects of renunciation is that if a person takes the various things in their life where they were attached, where they were expending energy, where they were invested in some way, emotionally, financially, whatever it might be, they take those things and they give them up, and they focus that portion of their energy, that portion of their life on the Dhamma. It's like pulling a ray, taking a ray of light and putting it into this magnifying glass. Maybe a better metaphor, angling the magnifying glass so that it catches the rays of light. Trees are blocking the rays. And when a person's whole life becomes devoted to the Dhamma in this way, then those rays can become concentrated. They can be used to cut through things that would seem impossible just from a little bit of diffuse sunlight. So the Buddha has given these teachings that the Dhamma is akaliko, it's timeless, it's always something that's available to whoever practices it, so long as their practice is sincere. So for the examples of these monks from the Polgastua, one can see this. One can see that even in a foreign country, even with scant resources, so long as one has one's body, one's mind, one's determination, then that's enough. I remember when I was first getting into Buddhism, and just reading through the Buddha's teachings and trying to pick it apart. I was a bit of a kind of debater, so I would go through and I would kind of argue with the Buddha's teachings, and and then I would actually try to prove them wrong by practicing them. Kind of, let's see if I can prove the Buddha wrong here, which never worked. Which was a wonderful thing. Throw all of your energy into trying to, or as much as a great deal of your energy into trying to prove the Buddha wrong, and whatever a person can do to do that, whatever efforts a person puts forth in that, just end up proving the Buddha right. So, remember doing these things and thinking to myself, this is really an excellent and amazing teaching. It's not really something that that requires like some kind of gain and loss from anybody else. It's something that's a win-win. So long as a person practices, so long as they put forth effort, then they win and other people win. And there's basically nothing that other people can do. One can think there's nothing other people can do to really take that away. It's something that one can develop for oneself or lose oneself when one stops practicing. So I remember meeting Jnanadeepa Bhante and discussing with him and listening to his explanations of the Dhamma. And one of the things that came through very clearly was that he was only interested in discussing the Dhamma. If nothing else. And even he wanted to discuss sometimes like the theoretical aspects of the Dhamma. I'd be trying to sometimes ply him for information about going on charika, like practical information about staying in the forest. He wasn't that interested. He was kind of interested in the Dhamma. And before he was about to pass away, he'd stopped speaking, and I had this kind of question about what was the counter to restlessness and anxiety. It's kind of, you can read through the suttas, you see all these counters to anger, to sloth and torpor, and these kind of things. I wasn't aware of any sutta that directly spoke about the counter to restlessness and anxiety. So I asked him this when he'd stopped speaking, and he actually answered me. And kind of, he'd stopped speaking by then, but he was willing to speak about that, and just that. So it's an example of how a person can take the physical aspects of their life, devote that to the Dhamma, kind of go into seclusion, go into the forest, take the mental aspects of their life, such that they're thinking about the Dhamma, such that when they're going forward or backwards, whatever they're doing, they're relating it to the Dhamma, and take the aspects of their speech and focus that on the Dhamma. The Buddha gives this word of satipatthana. So in other words, the way that a person, whatever the basis or foundation for a person's mindfulness is. And it's kind of, there's so many different ways that one can use the Buddha's teachings to establish mindfulness and become a filter for one's world. And depending on which one or ones of them one takes on, those are used to develop perceptions, and those perceptions are used to reduce attachments to whatever it is that one is craving for, one is clinging for. But it comes as part of a package where it links up with the speech that one engages in, it links up with the places where one lives, their seclusion, and all of these things link up to create, can link up to create something very, very powerful. So when a person is going through their life, whether they're a monk or a lay person, if they're going through and practicing here and there, practicing like an hour here, an hour there, then the ability to really move forward in practice seems really far off. But a lot of the ability, the examples of the great monks of the past, what they show us, what the Buddha teaches, is that this ability to move forward in significant ways in the Dhamma can be something that can grow exponentially if one takes all the various strands of one's life and devotes them to the Dhamma, takes one's speech, takes one's thoughts, takes one's actions, takes one's physical location, takes all of these things and turns them away from the world and turns them towards the Dhamma. What this brings up a lot of the time is fear. I mean, you can imagine doing what Jnana Vimala Bhante did and just giving everything up, or doing what Jnana Deepa Bhante did. And by the way, I like to go trekking, and I enjoyed trekking in forests. And Jnana Deepa Bhante is just totally unsurpassed. I mean, these days we have like a GPS, kind of all trails, and it's very hard to get lost if your phone is on, because it draws a little blue line, and you can even see the map in 3D. So you can literally see what's, generally what the terrain is like over the ridge you're going, and have a guess of exactly where you're going to go. Jnana Deepa Bhante had these topographical maps, and he would go alone into these extremely deep forests. And if you fall and sprain your ankle in one of these forests, you're finished. So he seemed like very unconcerned about doing this kind of thing. So this kind of level of renunciation can bring up fear in a lot of ways. It can bring up fear of losing the people that one is familiar with. It's not necessarily the case that everybody has to stop talking to their mother or father completely. I mean, there's elements in the suttas that that make it clear that that's not a necessity, but that the relationship should be in line with the Dhamma. And it can bring up fear, losing the relationships with the people who are closest to one. It can bring up fear, losing the types of speech that might be comforting to one. And it can bring up fear of losing one's body, losing one's life. This fear is sometimes much easier to combat in certain areas for certain people than others. I mean, some people are not afraid of going into dangerous situations, and kind of it's not really something that makes them uncomfortable to the same degree as say like being in a dangerous political situation, being in a situation where they have to let go of some future plan in order to step into something unknown. You can go into some really dangerous situation with a plan, but to let go of one's relationships and to step into something completely unknown can be frightening, and vice versa. Some people that's very easy, but going into places where physical danger is there is very challenging. But all these things come under the aspect of renunciation, renouncing the aspects of one's life, the relationships, the parts of them, or the relationship itself that's not in line with the Dhamma, renouncing the attachment to one's body, such that one is willing, not in a way that's foolhardy, but willing to go into situations that are dangerous, not excessively dangerous, but that carry some danger, but that also, along with this risk, carry the reward of greater seclusion, carry this reward of being in an environment where the elements of that environment push the mind inwards rather than pulling it outwards. One kind of gives these things up, renounces these things, and it creates a space in the mind. It creates a space in the mind which one can use, which one can devote that space now to the Dhamma, whereas before it was full of whatever attachment it was, whatever relationship it was, whatever safety there was in one's comfortable place one was living, rather than the one that's slightly more dangerous or potentially much more dangerous, but is conducive to the Dhamma. So when one has this space in the mind, one of the things that makes moving forward in practice seem almost impossible is when one feels like practice is blocked, because one is pushing forward, and it feels like one is hitting a barrier, one's meditation is stagnating. This can be a result of not renouncing enough, not having this intention to renounce, which that comes under the right intention factors, kind of the second factor of the Noble Eightfold Path. One has to have this intention to give things up, whatever it is that's necessary to give up, to strive for the Dhamma. If one is willing to give these things up, then one can find that those barriers can break away. And the more strands that one pulls from one's life and devotes to the Dhamma, the more strands and beams of light that one can gather into the magnifying glass, the more powerful the ability to cut can become. The more powerful the ability to directly know some of the things that the Buddha was teaching can come about. And those kind of things can sometimes come for people in these ways that are slow. it's kind of, one is just building up skills, and then the day comes when one might realize that one has a certain skill, or has developed a certain skill. There's tipping points for these things. So these great monks have shown us this way, this kind of Polgastua, this famous place, has produced possibly the only Western monk in modern times who's become an arahant. It's been rumored to produce other Western monks who've reached significant stages of the path. And these monks give us an example. It's an example of renunciation, of giving up just about everything in their life for the sake of the Dhamma. It's an example of effort, of taking all these various strands of their life and devoting them to the Dhamma, taking their speech, taking their thoughts, taking their body, the physical actions, and devoting all these things to the Dhamma. And it's an example. The example of their life is also an example of realization. What can come for people who do this sincerely? It can be the case that even today, no matter what day it is, no matter what age it is, the Dhamma is timeless. And so whoever puts the causes into place will definitely get the results that those causes are meant to bring. So the Buddha's teachings through and through is a teaching of hope, it's a teaching of potential. And the examples of the Sangha who have devoted themselves to this teaching is an example of inspiration. And in any age, in any day, these teachings, these examples can be relevant, because just like the Buddha had a body and mind, just like these great monks have a body and mind, practitioners up until the modern day also have bodies and minds, and they can be trained so long as the various strands of one's life become pulled more and more towards the Dhamma. Then the mind can become more and more powerful, so that it can cut through the things that bind us, cut through the things that cause one to suffer, so that one can be liberated from them.